Hello! Welcome back to another video. If you like this content and want to see more just like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to get notified. This is the third and final video of the series for my entry into the 26th annual Clip Studio Paint contest. The theme of this contest this year was Best Smile, and if you have entered, my best wishes and luck to you. I hope you win. The winners will be announced on February 12th of 2021, so stay tuned to that. I struggle, as with all drawings, with the eyebrows. I am not an eyebrows person, and normally I just draw the general shape and slap a gradient on it. So I went with the method of first coloring in the area where the eyebrows are, drawing the individual strands, and then making it darker because I'm second guessing myself, and finally going back and redrawing those strands. And that method worked. I'm quite happy with how the eyebrows turned out. The metal objects, mainly the earring, I've worked out long ago a method that works very well for me in drawing these metallic shapes. And it goes back to those big shapes that I talked about last episode, where you just draw big blocks of color to define those shapes, and then you just add more blocks of color to further define them. With things and objects like sunglasses frames and earrings, you don't need a lot of fine detail because those items are so small that you're not going to see, unless the damage is extensive, you're not going to see those little tiny details. So especially for smaller pieces of jewelry like the nose ring, which I take out later, and the sunglass frames, I would stick to larger chunks of color and skip the fine details on that. It'll save you time, it won't look as muddy, it won't look as busy. Some things should be busy and some things should be very simple, and I think jewelry is one of those things that should remain very, very simple. It doesn't need to be super elegant unless it's the focus of the piece. This particular image, it was not the focus of the piece, and I normally don't want jewelry to be the focus of the piece, so I generally keep it very, very simple. Even with the pearl necklace that I color later, it's very, very simple. Just a little contrast to kind of break up the larger shapes, which I think is why most people wear jewelry to begin with, is to break up large blocks of color or add a little interest. So keep it simple with jewelry. If you make it gaudy, it's going to make the whole thing gaudy, and gaudy is terrible. So watch out for gaudiness. Don't do it. Don't fall into the trap. And somehow I moved the image that I was working on, and I had to fix some of the lineups because I couldn't get it exactly perfect how it was, and I didn't realize I moved it, and I would have had to backstep a lot. So just kind of keep a mind's eye on how the image is, and keep track of all of the elements, especially if you're working on a lot of different layers like I do. It's really important to make sure all those layers are in sync, how they should be and how they're working. And again, for the pearl necklace, I didn't make them super elaborate, and I know that like the lines don't make perfect sense on how the necklace is moving around the curves of the neck, but I just wanted it to be a really simple breakup of color and help kind of with the contrast a little bit. So, you know, I think it worked. It was a fun little addition. They're not perfect, they're not super shiny, they're not eye-catching, it's just blocks of color breaking up larger blocks of color, which is how my mind works. And I think thinking of it like that really helps, instead of thinking about how to fix specific things. So the majority of this painting was painted with the oil pastel brush, quote unquote, from the Loish set, and I will link that download. It's a free download down in the description below. And I used it because I really liked the texture that it gave. It was easy to blend out, and I didn't some of the oil brushes in Clip Studio Paint I don't like because you start mixing, it start auto mixes the colors together and then you wind up with impure color, and I don't like that. When I add white on, I expect it to be white for a digital painting, so just like as if I was putting white on a real painting, I would be putting white if I wanted bright white onto a dry surface. So, and there's no really reason or way, I should say, to tweak that on that brush. So I really enjoy the oil pastel brushes for that reason. Especially for the clothing, it created a really lovely texture. Just make sure when you're doing clothes and you want to keep a texture that you keep most of the strokes going the same way, and it's important because it creates a grain of the fabric even if it's not actually, you're not actually creating the individual grain. It's pretty important there, and it helps fool the eye because that's all you're doing with digital painting. You're fooling the eye. So all you eye foolers out there, you know, think of ways that can help further benefit the makeup and how your image looks. I also, you know, made the cup bigger because someone pointed out that the cup was like very small, so, and I didn't want it to be, you know, inappropriate at all. I wanted it to be just a happy image. So I made the cup of the dress larger, and I'm actually pretty happy with it. I go back and rework it a couple times just to get it to look perfect how I want it, but it's me being a perfectionist again. But I think that it needed to be bigger, so I appreciate the feedback. Looking at you, Crusher, you know, I'm talking directly at you right there, buddy. So when it comes to doing the fabric in general, I really struggled with the back, mostly because I focus mostly on portraits. Full body images are not really my forte, so I really struggled with the back in general. It's kind of a hard shape to conquer, and I am still a little uneasy about it, but I was happy enough with it that it, you know, worked out. Let's move on to the hair. I'm going in and fixing the general shape of the hair. When you're doing the hair, it's very important to kind of find the general shape, how you want it to look. I draw in the extra flyaways and stuff because I want to know how it, you know, how it works and everything like that. I want to know where everything goes because I am a perfectionist. And as for the base of the hair, I find it really important to start out with a desaturated lighter tone. So if you want to go for a darker hair color, you need to do a desaturated blue tone or purple tone. And I know that sounds really strange, but the blue and the purple is really going to help shine through. The second thing I did is I created another layer to create the individual strands. Now you don't really need to do like every individual strand, but you need to make it clear that those strands are there and that they're not, it's not just a flat mass. So creating the strands is going to help you in the future when you're coloring, and it's also going to add a little bit of depth. So those strands, you want them there to stay, and making them perfect is really important. So pick the same color as your main kind of background there, and then set that layer to multiply, and that's kind of what I did. So my apologies, I apparently forgot to record some parts. Basically what I did for that specific part is I took the multiplied color, I color picked it, and then I made a new layer and then set that to multiply, so it's just the darker variant of the first color. And I'm actually, for most of this, I'm using the hair brush in the Loish set. Again, I'll link that down in the description below. But that's really helping me get some individual strands. For the actual individual strands and highlights, I am using the Loish oil pastel brush, like the hard oil pastel brush. It's a harder variant of the actual oil pastel. And I'm doing the highlights with golds and orange colors on color dodge and overlay layers. So it's really important when you're doing hair to really play with those layer styles to make kind of the image flow a little bit better and all the colors fit together better. And I wanted the hair to be backlit a little bit, so that's why I'm really focusing on the lighter colors on the outside. So I picked the light gold color from her earrings, and I am just going over some of the strands with the Loish oil pastel brush. And then I set that to overapply, and I did it again. And this is just slowly building up those layers because you don't want to just go in hard. You want everything to really fit together. So slowly building up the layers and letting them play off each other because that's what layer styles do. Be really methodical in planning out and playing around and make backups of things. So then, you know, if you like it and you try something else, you don't crush yourself in the, you know, meantime there. So I'm putting some just general shadows and stuff on the hat there, and I realized that the hair isn't coming out of the back of the hat like it should be, so I'm just filling in with some really broad strokes with the hairbrush in the Loish pack. And because most of it's in shadow, it was fairly easy to just kind of fill that in, so it wasn't too big of a deal because it was such a small area. And then I'm just going back over and being a perfectionist with all of my highlights and stuff like that. So, but when I work with and make digital paintings, I find it really important to fill in that value structure first. So where the shadows are, where the highlights are, and then you go back over it with texture. With the hair it's a little bit different because the highlights is what show the texture, so having a really nice textured brush like the hairbrush is going to really help with that. This is where I decided that because of some criticism that I received, again, I really enjoy criticism, so thank you Altofunk for suggesting taking out the nose ring. If I hadn't have taken out the nose ring, I wouldn't have found the serious flaw with her nose and the fact that it is shaded as if you're looking forward at it instead of looking to the side. So the nose is an interesting piece of equipment we have, for lack of a better word, because it's all cartridge except the nose bone at the bridge of your nose. So how the nose, like how the cartridge and how the skin wraps over the cartilage, how it's shown is very important. At the side, you're not going to see as much of the bulb as you would from the front because it kind of all meshes together. And I have it really protruding, so she has a really bulbousy ball nose right now. Obviously that's very incorrect for most people, and I didn't like how it looked, especially after taking out the nose ring. And how the nose connected to the lips and how the lips looked also looked incorrect to me, so I wouldn't have been able to fix those errors if I hadn't have taken out the nose ring. So that's stuff that I should have been able to work out in my sketching phase instead of just hit it with a nose ring, which is not the best way. So focusing, even though there's quite a bit of light that's hitting her face, focusing on getting the shadow underneath the bottom of her nose and showing that it's like a triangle essentially is really important. So I get that in, and it takes me a little bit to get it perfect because I'm basically reworking the nose at this point. And I think that's really an important fallback from this whole shenanigan fix that I had to do, because, you know, you're gonna go in and you're gonna fix things just as you work, because as you start rendering, things are gonna start looking more and more strange. And this is me fixing some parts of her nose, but not a lot. I realized that she didn't have really any chin at all, so I moved everything up and I think it looked much better. And then after that, I take it one step further and I try to you know, like flatten out her face a little bit. And even though I realized that is anatomically how it should look, it jutted out everything too much and it looked like she was more grimacing than smiling, like she was in an unpleasant situation. and I didn't want that. I wanted it to feel kind of laid back. So I took the unanatomical route and made it not completely perfect, so then it would look a little better in the long run. And of course, with everything else, I made a copy of my original before I made this major change. So I did one before I fixed the size of the nose and like the size of the chin and all that, and then I did it again when I tried to fix the angle of the mouth, and then reverted back to the other. And I will merge all those eventually because I don't like working with a ton of layers. Once I get something perfected, I normally perfect something else and then I merge the first perfected thing, so there's always one layer that I can go back to if something's not right. It might not be the best thing, but it's more painterly if I do it like that, and more methodical. I have to actually think about what to fix and what not to fix. So this is just going back and working on the values of everything, basically, not just one thing. Bouncing around is, again, really important because it's going to help the eye not get bored of one thing. For the texture of the hat, I used the 3-dot brush in the Loish set, which again will be down in the description below, and I make a really simple crosshatch pattern with it, you know, to try to demonstrate that there's a weave. And I do the weave mostly in the light areas, but in the dark areas. And all of these strange little brushes that I'm fiddling around with was me trying to get out of coloring the ribbon on the hat, because to be honest, I'm not very good with fabric, and I am surprised the clothes, like her dress, turned out as well as it did. So that was me trying to squirrel my way out of getting to have to color in this ribbon, and ultimately I just decided to color it in and do my best. So I do it, and I realize I shouldn't do it, but just try to, you know, if you're afraid of taking on something like this ribbon, you know, try it. It might turn out better than you think. And then there was a point where I think Clip Studio Paint crashed, or it didn't save properly, and I had to do the ribbon completely all over again, which really steamed my broccoli. And I was like, you know what, I'm so tired, I'm just gonna take the stupid ribbon off. But I persevered, and the second iteration of the ribbon actually looked really good, so I was really happy with it. So just going in and kind of really showing where the closes all the wrinkles and everything, it just really shows like where the light is hitting it and where the shadows are, and really showing where those really deep shadows are, where you can't really see where things are, you know, going into each other and that kind of stuff, and making it interesting in that way with lots of folds and stuff like that. I think it's really important. This knot, I have no idea what this knot is. It looks more like a cocoon, but I'm gonna roll with it. Okay, so this is Cryo's iteration of the cocoon knot. And then I go in and I put a color over it. I think I used the color correction layer. Didn't like it. I keep fiddling with it, and I just go with like a blue. Don't like it. Try some gradients to put on there, and I like that a little bit more. And then this iteration gets deleted, or I merge it or delete it or something. I have no idea what goes on. So anyway, so after I put the gradient on, I go in and I put another one on with a different set of gradients to try to bring out the color. So the first one is like more of like a shadowing gradient, where then I can go in and fix the shadows and highlights, and the second one is actually color. And this is my chance to add some pinks and stuff, which you'll see why is important later, into the piece, so it's not just the blue and gold. And then going back through and fixing and re-adding shadows and highlights and freckles on the back, because I can never really get happy with it. The bag I really struggled with. and I had to cut a lot of the footage out because it was just me trying a bunch of like brush textures trying to get it right, and I didn't like any of them. So I just decided to spare all of the suffering of watching me go through all of that, which is just me doing like big sheets of texture, essentially cloth textures, and none of them working. So this is working out where the shadows and highlights are on the straps, mainly on the bag. I haven't got to the main body of the bag yet. And just getting the really deep details. It kind of curves in because it's like right there where it meets the bag. So, and then I'm using the cross hatching to give it texture, essentially, because this is like a woven like canvas type bag. So just using a little bit of cross hatching. It's with the 3-dot brush. It's nothing fancy, but I think the simplicity works really well. And for some reason I decided to do the cross hatching before doing the shadowing. I'm not sure why on the bag. I have no idea. I tried it. Couldn't get it to work. And I think I just keep it. And then I go back in and I fix it later. So, you know, I go in and add shadows to the cross hatching after I'm done. And, you know, I guess it's fine. I'm not 100% happy with the bag just because this was like the biggest struggle point for me. You know, clothing in general is just hard because I don't draw a lot of clothes because I do portraits, so. But it's not bad, and I didn't want it to be too eye-catching because it's not the main focus. So I just wanted to look properly shadowed with a little bit of highlight, and then let that texture show through. So the texture cross-hatching is on a multiply layer with that original blue color. And it shows through even with the darkest of texture, so it's great. I add a bit of highlight there with a color dodge layer, I think it is. And then I lower the opacity down. And then I go in and select the entire blue part of the bag. And I add a gradient onto it. And this is just to help push that color a little bit better. And this is the gradient that I use a lot of. It's the white to blue gradient. I don't know why I like that one so much, but it's available on the Clip Studio Paint asset website thing that you can download it. It's a free set. The butterflies honestly were like so aggravating just because I had like an initial idea in mind and it didn't work, and so I went back and tried to fix it. And I liked it. I liked how the butterflies looked, and then I posted it for critique. And people are like, wow, those butterflies is this supposed to look like little stickers? And once it was said, I could not unsee the stickerness. So, you know. And saving time with multiplying, especially with butterflies, because they're supposed to look the same on both sides. That was just me cheating a little bit. I'm okay with that cheat. Saving time is really important, so do it if you can do it. I think it's really important. And this is just me playing around with different layers, trying to make them. I wanted them to be really bright and kind of breaking up the image in that way. And that the middle butterfly is obviously the largest, so it's gonna be more detailed. And going in and doing like the side butterflies aren't as bad as the fully open butterflies. I have no idea why. I think it's because you don't have to worry about mirroring it so much and getting the pattern just right. You can play around with the shapes. So I don't know. Butterflies, they were hard. If you draw butterflies a lot, kudos to you. They're not my cup of tea. I'm just not a bug person in general, I think, is my main issue with that. So going in, I always do the lighter blue color and then add it to color dodge and then do a multiply layer on top of that to kind of bring in some of the darkness. And then that really white outline that I fixed later, which I actually do not have in this video because it was just extra time that wasn't needed. So I just go in and get rid of some of those white outlines and just replace it with the darker blue. And it turned out fine, I think. I think it worked out. They're definitely not the best looking butterflies, but you know, I made them and it was my first time drawing butterflies. First attempt, I don't think it's that bad. And I realized these are like weird, not monarch shaped blue monarchs, and blue monarchs aren't actually a thing, so you know what, you can dog me for that if you'd like. That's just me coming up with a butterfly pattern that I found interesting. I tried. Okay. There's no excuse, I tried. So for the really dark areas, I set it to difference so then I could see the actual lines where I was drawing because everything was so dark in that area. And then I just turned it back to normal when I was done with the line work and all that stuff. So, and then it's literally just the same steps over and over to get that butterfly look. So shading, so then it's not a solid tone, and then adding in the color dodge and then the multiply layer afterward. And I have to say, making these butterflies were definitely not a zen moment for me. They actually took me a lot of time with a lot of frustrations, and people were actually commenting like, why are you spending so much time on the butterflies? So again, if you like drawing butterflies, kudos to you. I like drawing people, and I realize people isn't everyone's cup of tea. Butterflies are definitely not my cup. I think it's because to me they have to be perfect, and there's no way I can make it perfect even though I'm a perfectionist. So there's that. This is me trying to take the big butterfly and warping it in to fit the other butterfly and make it look like it's not the same butterfly that's just there. And then using the mesh, and it didn't work. So I just made a copy of that butterfly, pulled it out so then I could get a similar pattern, and with the town, it's really, I don't really have much to say on this other than the fact that, again, I'll reiterate, butterflies suck. The end. Just kidding, that's not the end of the video, please don't hang up. Okay, there's some, the end part of this was honestly one of my favorite parts to paint, so I hope you can do some teaching there as well with the background. I do want to state that the majority of the butterflies was done with the G Pen in Clip Studio Paint. I then used for some of the shading the oil pastel, which I talked about before. So onwards to the background, because this is honestly one of my favorite parts. I'm really happy. So I used a gradient, the gradient and the cloud brushes are all up on the Clip Studio asset website for free. They do not cost any gold coins or clippy points. So this is just me making a really nice, kind of colorful, contrasting sky scene, and it was this was the major zen point for me, was creating the background. I had a lot of fun, and I actually learned a lot. I learned how to clear water, and you'll see that in a bit. So this was actually a lot of fun to color. And I just kind of zoomed in here to kind of color it without the main figure in, because I thought that was really important, and then I realized that I didn't have to do all of the middle where the majority of the ocean kind of surf. So I use a lot of distort and perspective tool with Control T on this, just because like it needed to look more flat than it was, and also using gradient tools and using those gradient tools to create highlights and just tone changes in general. It was really important. It really helped kind of bring out the perspective, and two, the rest of the image, because it created that green color, which was really nice. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you want to see more content just like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to get notified. I will see you on the next video. Have a great day.